Today is January 13th. It's the 13th day of the year, and this is the On This Day podcast. A heavy snowstorm hits Washington, D.C. on this day in 1982. Washington National Airport is temporarily closed to takeoffs and landings. And around the city, many people leave work early, knowing it will take them hours to get home in the near whiteout conditions. By the early afternoon, the runway at Washington National is cleared and planes get in line for takeoff. Air Florida Flight 90 gets doused with de-icing solution at the gate. The de-icing solution makes the ground slippery, and when the pilots try to back away from the gate, the plane doesn't move. They try to use the plane's reverse thrusters, but that only sucks a lot of snow and ice into the engines. The plane doesn't budge. It takes a tug to push it away from the gate, but once it's pushed back, Flight 90 gets in line for the runway. There's a backup on the runway because of the temporary airport closure. There are 15 planes ahead of the Air Florida flight. By the time the 737 reaches the head of the line for takeoff, it's been almost an hour since it was de-iced. And in that time, snow and ice has accumulated on the plane's wings and fuselage. Not to mention what was sucked into the engines when the pilots ran the reverse thrusters. But they're more than an hour and a half behind schedule. So Air Florida Flight 90 takes off to prevent further delay. The plane never gets up enough speed to achieve the required thrust for takeoff. The plane leaves the ground, but is in a stall almost immediately and struggles in the air for 20 seconds and then drops. Air Florida Flight 90 crashes into the 14th Street Bridge and plunges into the Potomac River, the Potomac's sub-freezing temperature water chock full of ice. When it falls out of the sky, the plane strikes a handful of cars on the bridge, killing 4 motorists. Other commuters stuck on the bridge jump out of their cars and race down the embankment towards the river's edge. By the time they get down there, all they can see is the tail section of the plane. The rest of the plane has already sunk below the waterline in a matter of seconds. 73 passengers and crew on Flight 90 are killed in the crash. 6 passengers, seated in the back of the cabin, emerge from the plane and hold on to the wreckage. They know they need to do something to save themselves, to get to safety, but they're almost instantly immobilized in the freezing cold water and quickly begin suffering from hypothermia. One of the commuters stuck on the 14th Street Bridge, Roger Olian, a worker at St. Elizabeth's Hospital. He jumps in the water to try to help the survivors, but the water is so cold and there's so much ice he can hardly get away from shore. Other bystanders pull him out of the water. Shortly thereafter, a U.S. Park Police helicopter arrives on the scene. Pilot Don Usher and paramedic Gene Windsor expected to head home early like everyone else in the city. It's snowing hard and it's dangerous weather to be flying a helicopter in. But when the emergency call comes in, they hop in their chopper and head towards the Potomac, following the interstate below in the near-zero visibility snowstorm. Usher and Windsor begin plucking the passengers out of the water, one at a time, dropping a line for the frozen passengers to hook under their arms, and lifting them up and over to shore. First is passenger Bert Hamilton, then back a second time for flight attendant Kelly Duncan. Emergency crews on shore hand off an extra line to paramedic Gene Windsor. Windsor and Usher head back to the wreckage a third time and drop the lines. One of the lines drops into the hands of a male passenger who is still strapped in his seat, clinging to the wreckage but unable to free himself. He hands off the line to the other passengers. Nikki Felch, her colleague Joe Stiley, and Priscilla Tirado grab hold of the lines and are dragged towards the shore. Halfway there, though, Nikki Felch loses her grip and falls back into the water. And moments later, Priscilla Tirado slips away too. Tirado lands on a piece of ice, frantically trying to swim to shore, but unaware that she's not going anywhere. She's blinded by jet fuel and in shock. Windsor and Usher deposit Joe Stiley on shore and return for her. The paramedic drops the lifeline with the life preserver on the end of it for Priscilla. She grabs hold of it and is once again dragged ashore, but moments later, her arm slips out of the life ring and she slowly slips underwater. Dozens of bystanders who half an hour earlier were stuck in rush hour traffic on the bridge now stand on shore watching helplessly as Priscilla and Nicky flounder in the water. One bystander is compelled to do something. Lenny Skutnik, a Congressional Budget Office employee who was in a carpool heading home earlier in the snowstorm. Skutnik pulls off his boots and jumps in the river. He swims as fast as he can out to Priscilla Tirado, who by now is fully submerged underwater. Skutnik lifts her head above water and pushes her towards the riverbank, kicking with every ounce of energy he's got. He pushes her close enough for a fireman to grab hold of her and pull her out. The Parks Police helicopter heads back out for Nicky Felch. She's so frozen that she can't even grab hold of the life ring at the end of the rope. In an exceptionally risky maneuver, pilot Don Usher lowers the helicopter skids into the water, and Gene Windsor pulls Nicky Felch up on the chopper, whisking her to shore. They then head back out to the middle of the river and to the wreckage one more time to pick up the last passenger, the sixth passenger who survives the crash into the icy Potomac River, the man who passes off the lifeline to the other survivors. Usher and Windsor hover over the wreckage looking for him, scanning the wreckage that's shifted in the water. They search for 20 minutes for the man later identified as Arland Williams, but Williams is never seen alive again. 2 weeks after the crash, Lenny Skutnik is invited to the State of the Union address by President Ronald Reagan, who salutes Skutnik during the speech, praising Skutnik for his selfless heroism, and beginning what becomes a State of the Union tradition of honoring invited guests with a seat next to the First Lady and a hat tip. Guests who are informally referred to as Skutniks. Lenny Skutnik, Roger Olian, and the late Arland Williams are awarded the Coast Guard Gold Life-Saving Medal. Helicopter pilot Don Usher and paramedic Gene Windsor are awarded the Silver Life-Saving Medal. And the 14th Street Bridge is later renamed the Arland D. Williams Jr. Memorial Bridge, in honor of the man who repeatedly passes off the lifeline to his fellow survivors and drowns when Air Florida Flight 90 crashes into the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., on this day in 1982. There are 352 days left in the year.